Hey, folks, thanks for tuning into the show. You can find us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, the Podcast Index, and Podcasting 2.0. We'd really appreciate if you download Fountain, find us there, and support us via Value for Value. We hope you enjoy the show. Happy listening. My next guest is Steve Mack. He's a serial entrepreneur, a bit of a visionary, a really nice guy, a philanthropist, and a great human being. He's been in the family business for generations. He's learned a lot. He's made mistakes. He's been lucky. He's been smart. But most of all, he gives back. Let's dive in. Hey, Steve, welcome to the show tonight. How are you?
Great. How you doing? Thanks for having me on today.
That's good to hear that you're doing well. Steve, why don't you start off by telling the audience who you are and what you're doing now, and then right when that's done, take us back. Let's figure out. Let's dive into Steve Mack. Let's see where you came from and who you are.
Okay. Well, I mean, today my priorities are my children. They've always been high on my list. They're actively involved in working in a company I started that you're very aware of, and I'm sure we'll talk about it. And then very involved with my new granddaughter, who now is 6 years old. So it goes from my kids to my granddaughter, and then looking forward to many more. I'm into working a lot with new technologies for our platforms. We've got a new sector of business industry that we're moving into that I'm looking to try to do the same, have the same impact that I've had in all these years in the pawn industry. And then a lot of my time is just thinking about philanthropy, working on projects, helping the homeless, working on Stop Hate Project, just a few little things that I think that I can have a small impact in.
Well, knowing you, I know you're going to have a big impact. And, you know, I have a saying, if you go out to my LinkedIn, and this certainly applies to you, and I had no idea you're involved in so much. It said, if you want to get something done, give it to someone who's busy. And so you'll see that right at the header of my LinkedIn, and you certainly sound like you fit the bill. And I know you, Steve, as a guy who gets a vision and then follows through and gets stuff done. You know, by way of a little background, I met Steve very far into his professional journey when he had built this company, and I'm going to let him tell you about it. But rather than speed to that spot, Steve, you know, tell us about your life. You know, take it back as far as you'd like. Be comfortable. Like, how did Steve Mack become Steve Mack?
Yeah, so I mean, when preparing for this today, it gave me some time to reflect and think back about things like this, and I think about, you know, like, why do I do the things that I do, and how do I become so possessed? And so it definitely started when I was a kid, and having a mother who's a very, very important part of my life, matriarch of the family, and my dad. But my mom was a Holocaust survivor. She came to this country when she was really young, and she just had incredible strength and fortitude and love. Coming from a really horrible place in her childhood, she was a leader in her own right. So watching her, growing up with her, listening to her, watching her throughout her life, was certainly really impactful as a young child. And then it came from her and my dad, who brought me to Reno, Nevada when I was less than a year old.
Wow.
They were both from San Francisco and Oakland. It's where they both grew up. And my dad was fired and had no place to go. And he had a conversation with his brother. And when I was, you know, with whatever my dad could get, in basically raising about $2,500 and a tank full of gas, they drove to Reno and opened a small pawn shop. And I kind of grew up there. They both ran the store. They both worked together.
Mom and dad, or your dad and his brother?
Mom and dad.
Wow. What made them decide to open a pawn shop?
Well, his brother had opened a pawn shop,
Okay.
My dad was the third generation. I'm the fourth generation. So my
Wow.
great-grandfather started in Seattle. My grandfather had a store in Oakland, California.
Okay.
And my dad branched out with really no interest in ever owning a pawn shop, during his young life. But the opportunity was in Reno. His brother told him, "Say, if you don't have anything going," and my dad didn't have another job, and a young kid, and like, what are you going to do? He said, go to Reno. This is going to be the best opportunity you're ever going to have in your life. He took his brother's advice, came to Reno, and by the time I was 7 years old, and they both worked, incessantly, small operation, $2,500.
Yeah.
Went to dry cleaners and picked up leftover clothes from the dry cleaners, and then folded them, put them in the store, and started, with anything they could get their hands on, and
Wow.
resell, and then do whatever he could to put a few bucks on the street, and grew that business, and then developed, small little banking relationships, used his credit card,
Crazy.
to get to the $2,000 limit, and then paid it off, and then put the money back in and back
Rinse,
out.
repeat.
Right. And just whatever he could do to, get a few bucks here and there. And then I grew up in the pawn shop, and I loved it. My mom loved the business. My dad, while he was, working in the store, he wanted to be a lawyer, and he
Okay.
was studying and taking the correspondence classes, and became a lawyer, never practicing. But I was in there, and just really super intrigued by every single little thing that would come in there, including like all those guitars you have in the back.
Yeah.
And
I got a few of these from a pawn shop, by the way. Maybe
right.
even one of yours. As a matter of
Well,
fact, definitely a couple from yours, because they were Cash America shops in Vegas. We know where they came from.
okay. All
Yeah.
right. Yeah, super pawn.
Yep.
Thank you. Keeping the
Yeah.
legacy alive.
Yeah. Big time. Keeping it alive.
And so, and then the second part of it, I love the customer. I love the customers. I made friends.
Yeah.
And they were repeat customers. A lot of people, especially in Reno, it was a small little gaming town at the time. And mind you, when my dad was in business, Nevada was the only state in the United States that had gambling. New Jersey wasn't even a part of the action yet.
Wow.
And so people would come from the Bay Area, and then bring the buses and all the people in. They came in, and a very large Asian community, which, culturally then, I'm being exposed to all these amazing cultures, and
Sure.
and people that in Asian culture, if you don't gamble with borrowed money, it's bad luck.
Really?
Yeah. So for the
I didn't
pawn
know
business,
that.
it was unique. They'd borrow money. They'd come in and borrow money, and then borrow money to gamble. Some would come back like within an hour because they won.
Yeah.
And then they go, and then they lose, and they come back. And the record number of times one single customer came in was 11 times on the same day, on the same item, the same day.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That is incredible.
Yeah. So you learn about all these different cultures. I fell in love with the business. I love the consumer. And then, but I was always told by my mom and dad, if this is just not a great business to be in, it's really hard to be in. It was not really thought of in a very positive way by your neighbors, by many people that just saw the pawn business as being a very ugly business. And I was on the pursuit to get through high school. I wasn't a great student. I had a hard time reading. I was never diagnosed with anything, although I did have challenges. It wasn't dyslexia, but it was ADD, as I later learned. I just couldn't focus long enough, more than 5 minutes, before my mind was somewhere there while I was reading. So I was a BC student. I figured it out. It took me a lot longer, but I was tenacious in my studies. Ended up going to the local university for a couple of years, in University of Nevada, Reno. And I wanted to be an accountant. My dad said, "Hey, if you're going to go into business, you should be an accountant. Best job." Okay, Dad. And then I went to university, and I was good at it. And then the university was having some issues with their accounting department and their accreditation. And I thought to myself, I need to get out of town, because I'm not going to get worried about getting my degree from university. The accreditation may not be valid. So I went to Arizona State. Gave me there's another world outside Reno, Nevada. I
Yep.
met all the Midwestern people and all the East Coast people, and I fell in love with, the salt of the earth, the Midwest, and all my best friends now are from all those wonderful places in the United States, and broadened my horizon again, and then learned about their families, their fathers, what they did, and I, kind of saw myself as had potential of maybe, um, you know, being capable of actually doing stuff. I could see, I would listen to them. I became friends with a lot of my friends' mothers and fathers.
Yep.
So that they were like the relationship I really wanted.
Yeah.
And it just gave me such great insights and shared so many things with me. And I'm so grateful. Even one of my friends was a vice president for Target that later came to work for me.
No
To
kidding.
help me as I was scaling my company. I said, I could really use a guy like you that work for Target, like could help me scale and learn how do I manage all these stores? He goes, I'll teach you everything you want. And so
Nice.
he actually came and worked for me for 2 years to help in the pursuit of driving excellence in our retail pawn shops. And so I get a degree in accounting.
Yep.
Uh, I'm going to be an accountant. I'm going to law school. My dad wanted me to be a tax attorney.
Okay.
So I thought, okay, I can do that. And I was really burnt out. Accounting was really, wasn't the easiest degree to get in business. And I was really afraid of taking the CPA exam 2 years after, because that was sort
Okay.
of what we did. I get a job working for Price Waterhouse. They hired me because they loved the way that I could talk about small business and how much I was in
Really?
it. And I'd worked every single summer for my dad, all through college, all through high school. It's where I spent my summer.
Yep.
And I would reorganize his store. And I created actually the first inventory system I created when I was like 14 years old. Helped my
Wow.
dad organize how to find stuff with a little accounting book I put together and a location system. And which I later digitized and put into our systems later. And I worked one day. I got the job. I was there meeting with the senior partner of Price Waterhouse in Phoenix, and he said, "So welcome. How are you? How are you looking at the job? Are you excited to be here?" And I answered it in not a very a convincing way, because his next question was, is this really something that you really feel passionate about?
Okay.
And no one ever asked me that. And I go, I can't answer that truthfully. Like, I can't say that this is really where I want to be. And he goes, why don't you just think about that and then give me a call back in the next day or two, tell me whether this is really the right thing for you.
Wow.
And so I get home, I call my dad, and I said, Dad, I don't know whether this is a letdown, but I think I want to come home and come work for you. And he was like tickled. And
Really?
so all that time that he said he didn't want me to be there, he
Yeah.
couldn't be happier, because
Of
he
course.
knew how much the business meant to me. Packed up my stuff, left Arizona, drove back to Reno, and within 2 weeks, my dad handed me the keys to the store, which was like spring-loaded keychain
Sure.
with about 10 keys, right
Yep.
on the side. 22 years old
Unreal.
and running a pawn shop. And so
You said something interesting that I learned very much later on. So, little background here. Steve and I met when Steve owned a platform. Well, Steve sold his company to a company called Cash America, which I'm going to let you get to in detail. I was the CIO, or Chief Marketing Technology Officer, of Cash America, and I met you post the sale because you had started a software platform and we were having troubles with our software platform. And that's sort of how we met. But the thing that I learned that I didn't know, and I want you to dig in here a little bit because I think there's a story in the story. When I was interviewing for Cash America, every professional person around me told me not to take that job. They said to me, oh, no, dude, it's the pawn business. It's a crappy business. It's this, it's that. It's ripping people off. It's doing all of these things. And The recruiter said to me, no, you got to go meet these guys. This is a publicly traded company. They're audited all the time. Like this is a legit company. You can't, this isn't like Starsky and Hutch where they stop off at the pawn shop, and Huggy Bear's in the back. I mean, this is a real corporate business. And after meeting Dan Feehan, it's like, wow, this is a pretty stand-up guy. And they had all the great things, and they were really trying to polish the image of a pawn shop. But here's the thing I learned that you obviously knew early on as a kid. The people that come into those pawn shops and the stores are really just amazing people. And I remember being in Vegas one time at a shop, and this guy comes in and he's got his baby in his arms wrapped in a blanket. It's nighttime. It's dark. I don't know exactly what time it is. And he puts his phone down and says, I just need $75. And the guy says, I could probably give you more. This is like a brand new iPhone. He says, I just need $75. It was Wednesday night. He says, I get paid Friday morning. I'm going to come back and get my phone Friday morning. Guy gives him $75 transaction. And so while the paperwork's going up, he tells the guy, yeah, my baby's sick and I have to go to urgent care and I don't have the $75. Dude, in my life, I've been very blessed. I got brothers, or I got a brother, I got a sister. My parents were around when I was young. I got uncles, I got aunts. Somebody could have given me the $75 for a few days. This guy didn't have that. This guy didn't have that. He needed a professional place to go, make a transaction so he can tend to an immediate need. And I realized at that moment that this was a utility that people needed, and that not everybody's as fortunate to have the depth of family to fall back on. Now, I also learned that 73% of people who pawn things came to pick up their goods, which that was another thing that blew me away. I thought they came in, they flipped it, and they were done, and they never came back. And that was that. So there were so many things I learned that I'm sure you can educate us much further on, but I fell in love with the business pretty quickly after spending my first few days going from shop to shop to shop, meeting the people, seeing the operation, and then learning the value of next generation merchandise. So what was it like for you as a young guy? Because you talk about you making friends, you love the business, you love the merchandise, you like the people. Like, how did that start forming? Tell me about that.
Well, so, it's, whenever you're going to get involved in something, you got to find purpose, right? I think you do. And it has to be for the greater good. It has to be. And no matter what it is, how does it translate? How does it involve something that's, for me is like somehow helping people and do something and work towards something that is going to provide value to the people that actually need it the most. I mean, how lucky could I be? The pawn business, a segment of the population where they have no place to go. And a lot of times, your point, where they have family and friends, they have pride too, for the reason that they don't want to ask their family for the money. Right?
Interesting.
So they have, either or. But they've just chosen, because it's not easy to go into a pawn shop and take something that means something to them.
Mm-hmm.
And what people don't know about pawn is they're not selling it. A lot of people really confuse the definition of pawn. So you have this public perception, and then to your point, everyone is telling you, like, don't do it. But it didn't take long before you like, no, it's misconceived. And then I thought of all the opportunities and how to do it better than the rest of the industry. You could be a contrarian in how everything's done. You can try doing it a different way, and it would just like take off. And I like I'm a contrarian thinker. I like following trends, but I like looking at, well, is there another opportunity to do it a different way that might be better than what the way the trend's actually saying it can be done? Because I'm always looking for differentiation. Because I think that builds loyalty, and which is hugely important when you're building a business. Is can you develop trust, with the relationship with your customer, And who else best than someone you're actually helping? So,
What did you do to think differently? Like, what was the first thing you did to differentiate yourself from the guy down the street?
well, I mean, I got to I got to remember what I grew up around, the table that I grew up with, my grandfather, my
Yeah.
uncle, my dad. What do you think we talked about?
Yeah.
The way things that they used to do, the way that
Uh,
things that used to be done. I mean, it was like, it was right there in front of me. And I could formulate a plan in my mind how I wanted to do it when I started the day that um, I started working for my dad. And the first thing I did was that one of the biggest problems with pawn shops was that they weren't regulated when I was there.
okay.
And a part of the problem was that everyone assumed that you were taking in stolen merchandise.
Mm-hmm.
So I go, well, if everyone thinks that, including the police department, why don't
Okay.
we do something about it? And we were the very first state to pass a law, which I initiated in my first 2 years of working at the pawn shop. Went to Carson City, became the president of the Nevada Pawnbrokers Association, formulated that,
Okay.
went to
Wow.
legislature and passed the first law that required an ID. It wasn't popular amongst the pawnbrokers. Okay. I brought them some other little goodies to help the business
Yeah.
on a better financial platform. You help them make a few bucks.
Yeah.
But I partnered with law enforcement in order to get the law passed.
Amazing.
And this is what it meant to them. It was important to them. Then all of a sudden, I'm friends with the district attorney's office who hated the pawn shops.
Sure.
Then I'm the friends with the chief of police. And it's now we're like providing information, helping them do their job better. And so it was like, oh, this is really good. And then our perception changed. And I was like, really starting to become really comfortable being a pawnbroker, proud to be a pawnbroker, where this was the fear where my parents, had been sharing with me their whole life in working in the store, that you really have to defend it all the time. People look down on you. And I'm saying, hey, we're doing something different and better. So
That's why I
that's
went
how,
to Cash America.
yeah.
The khaki pants, the golf shirt, the no bars on the windows, bright, clean, well maintained, well kept, just completely different image. And that you did a service to law enforcement, right? You became the solution. You were no longer part of the problem. You were part of the solution. And I understand that. And I see that. So then who developed the systems to track all this stuff? Was that you, or did somebody
Yeah.
else do that down the road?
No, there were none. There was
Okay.
one company that started. My uncle, my dad's brother, he basically was the first guy that I knew ever took a jab at it, and that was on a deck, with card punch. And he built basically a ticket system.
Okay.
And I remember my dad talking about it, again at the dinner table. He goes, "My brother's like possessed by this system, and he's losing so much money." And but his business was just like exploding.
Really?
Exploded because he could do more transactions. There was so much demand that you couldn't, like, he just learned about the business and acceleration and turnover. And I mean, it was like, we were all handwriting tickets, and as fast as we could write a ticket, and there were so many you could do a day.
Yeah.
And, you just couldn't get past that as a single store. And then, so I was really like always talking to him and asking him about it. And then I got a degree in accounting. I didn't tell you that the second part of my degree was information systems.
Okay.
So, and I discovered I was really good at something when I was my senior year at Arizona State, which I never really understood that I was good at it, because I was struggling in school, and my biggest problem in college was I didn't understand the problem, because I couldn't sit in class long enough to hear what the real assignment was.
Okay.
And a quick story: when I was in my last class for my information systems class, which was a logistics challenge, I solved the challenge in 26 cards. and which was like impossible to do back then. And I had my cards and with a rubber band wrapped around it. And I remember I was in my blue OP shorts. So I remember walking in, and I'm watching these guys with the beards and the other guys who were in the, because you were basically programming and loading on a deck on a card punch machine, and to get computer time was like important and rare and hard to do at the time. And they were bringing in ink cards, thousands of cards. And I'm sitting in class and I'm looking at everyone and I'm like ready to break down, start crying, because I go, there's no way that I understood there's no way I could have solved it. And everyone's like turning in their work and they're handing it to the professor. And I take my cards and I throw it into the basket. And the professor looks at me and just like smirks, just a smirk.
Okay.
Okay, I get the highest grade in the class, and I
Wow.
ace the final. And back in those days when you started thinking about programming on a PC, which had just come out, memory and all the constraints of developing was like so like critical.
Yeah.
I'm a process engineer. I can whittle down a process and I can think about it and figure it out. And I'm not like mimicking, all the steps and with the manual process in it. I could just say, no, why are we doing this? And why are we doing that? We could go straight to the answer. And so that led to the first development on my own, which was a couple of guys that were basically pawning their it was a Walkman, these two college students who I ended up hiring for my first project. I said, do you guys know how to code on or build a program on this Apple IIe, which came out of pawn, because my dad wouldn't give me any money for the $2,000 computer.
Okay.
I had to wait for the $400 loan come out, right? $400 on the Apple IIe, which was worth, a lot more than $400 at the time.
Yep.
And I paid these guys $200 to develop my first inventory system.
Holy cow.
And so now I'm like, okay, now I got inventory control. Now I'm ready to do point of sale. Okay, I'm jumping from inventory to point of sale. And I hire these two guys out of college and start a company with these guys, and we develop our first DOS-based system.
Point of sale. Crazy.
And
Did you do loans too, or was it just retail?
No,
it did loans, the whole deal.
Retail and tickets, and
Wow.
then built out Novell networks, tied all the computers together. Then the second store, then the third store, and then pulling the data in, polling, frame relay,
Yep.
all the old anything to connect to try
Anything
to get
that connected. Yep.
right. And then and became experts at everything, as you had to be in order to get to the next stage. And okay, what you saw when I
So how many stores did you wind up building up to, and what did your dad think of that along the way?
43 company-owned stores, 7 franchises, 50 stores total.
What states?
Washington, Nevada, Arizona, and California.
Okay.
And those were the states I was operating in. Just one store in California, but mostly in Nevada, Arizona, Washington. And wanted to open, I was ready to open more stores, but as you know, Cash America purchasing my company, I'll tell you the backdrop of how that happened. It wasn't for sale. It wasn't even the first thing on my mind. My dad, in the family, in the course of the family business, my dad was older, and he wasn't like, when he gave me the keys, Vic, it was like he was done.
Okay.
He let me, which was a blessing. It's like he said he had faith in me, but he was burnt out. He had it, and I was pretty good at it. And so I wanted to open another store. I said, hey, we're ready to open another store. And I go, I want to put the systems over on the other store. We have 2 stores. I'll be able to do this. He goes, how are you going to run my store and run the other store?
Yeah.
And I go, I'm just going to be able to do it. He goes, well, I don't want you to do it. Because I asked him if he'd help me finance it. And he said, no. He says,
wow. This is store number 2.
This is store number 2.
Okay.
I go, so what you don't want to have anything to do with it? He goes, no. So I go, I'm going to figure it out. And so the guy that wanted to sell me a store, he loved me because I used to look in his store all the time as an old Italian guy, Pierre.
Okay.
And I knew, I knew all the bankers in town because I would be making all the deposits and developing all the relationships, and they all knew me since I was a kid. And I went to the bank and I said, hey, Pierre wants to sell me the store. If I can get to a number, would you lend me enough money for the down payment? I had nothing.
Okay.
So he goes, if Pierre will sell you the store, I will figure it out.
Wow.
So everyone knew each other. So
Everybody knew everybody.
everyone knew of it. So
Yeah.
I go to Pierre. I said, Pierre, I got the bank, Nevada National Bank, give me the money. I go, I think they'll lend me 80%. Your price is fair. I'll lend me 80%. If you're okay with it, and I'll sign everything over to you. If I somehow default, so you got no risk, will you sell to me? He goes, I'll do it. And he had a really heavy Italian accent.
Okay.
Right? I'm not good at that. But believe me, he's like old time Italian and just the most beautiful, nicest person in the whole world. And he goes, as long as I can come in and check the business and you give me, I can look anywhere and do anything. I said, done.
Wow.
And then
Okay.
I go to the bank and I said to the banker, and God, I just can't think of his name, but he goes, you're gonna need more than 20%. He goes, I'm gonna lend you 40 because you need operating capital.
Okay. Oh boy.
So he gave me 120% loan.
No.
He gives me the extra like 30 grand plus, it was like about a $600,000 purchase.
Wow.
And he had faith in me too. And I said, there's only one thing I know that my dad taught me about borrowing money. He goes, you're the first person who's going to get any of the profit and cash flow. All the profits go to the bank. I know that much. He says,
Okay.
as long as you treat and respect the bank that way, you'll never have any problems. So rule number one, whoever lends you the money, make
They're
sure
first.
you pay it first.
Wow.
And,
Great lesson.
And so I told my dad, I got the money. He was so mad.
Was he mad?
He was mad. I mean, and he goes, well, and so he was like, well, here's the deal. He goes, if you can't grow the business, if you can't do this, I said, just tell me what you expect from me and I'll manage to that. And so I nailed it every year. I exceeded all expectations. I always made the business. And I went from that store to next store to number 3 to 4.
In what span of time?
About 2 years.
Wow. Did you acquire or de novo?
No, acquired.
You acquired. Okay.
Acquired all these stores that wanted to be sold. And then then I wanted to go to Vegas. And then my dad said, okay, I'll go in on one.
Okay.
So this went to till store 17. Okay. My dad was in until he said, no mas. I can't do it anymore. Okay.
So from 4 to 17, he was along for the ride.
He was along for the ride.
Okay.
And I mean, lots of stuff happened in between, lots of family, lots of like life stuff.
Yep.
But I figured out how to buy my dad out. I had to develop the relationship with First Interstate Bank. I had the systems, I had the accounting, I had information, like real-time information to be able to give the bank.
Yep.
And I wrote a report for all the compliance so that whenever they wanted to see anything, they saw compliance immediately.
It's great.
So I learned that, they just want information and they want to see it the way they want to see it. And I was all into being a really good accountant, understood how to read a financial statement. That really helped me. That was essential. And then I knew that the banks were number one. And that's how I got to 17 and then figured out how to buy my dad out. That took 3 passes. He said no, and then finally the number was right. So it wasn't like, I was under pressure to do a deal, but every time I did it, would present it and bring the money to the table. He'd say, "Nah, I'm not ready."
Okay.
then
I
he
don't
was,
think it was. I don't think it was the money. It was probably just his. What else was he going to do?
I mean, if while you're at work, you could see, it takes time before, in this industry, these are like what make, and people have been in this business and it's their business, and you got to respect how hard it is to be successful. And that, it's not an easy decision. And for my dad, it wasn't until he said, okay. And we finally came to a deal. It was hard for everybody. And I put everything up. I owned, by the time it was store 17 were the stores I owned, and the ones that I just said, hey, I will put up 100% of my stock. We were 49, 51% partners. He was 51, I was 49. And I said, I'll give you my 51% of my stock for collateral to do the deal. And I borrowed the money from the bank. And then first thing is I do another leverage deal, and I go to Arizona.
Okay.
And almost, I messed up so bad. I made all the wrong moves, and I was able to pivot quick, Vic, and I got the stores turned around and cash flow start coming in, and
Okay.
and I learned in that time, and I was pretty good at finance, leverage, cash flow, and then accelerating all the metrics, because I would compete against the publics, and I show the public performance, and then show our performance. And that gave the bank the confidence that we had something special.
Fantastic.
And they kept growing with me, and First Interstate Bank grew with me all throughout that whole experience.
So you had, then going back to differentiation. So you were probably one of the first guys to really think about systems, processes, financial integrity when it came to reporting, risk mitigation when it came to merchandise with the police.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're spearheading all these things. So you were really operating like a real company inside of a business that was frowned upon and seemed as, no books, no keeping, no nothing. Like you really legitimized everything you were doing there. And then you put on top of that these very strong banking relationships that came from that, and their willingness to sort of lend you, very significant amounts of money to finance the growth of the business. That's an incredible story, especially from a guy who didn't want to be an accountant.
Thanks. I mean, we had such a good relationship with the bank when First Interstate Bank got bought out by Wells Fargo. My relationship manager in Nevada made the first introduction to the new CEO. And we hit it off. He told him the story. I was their largest lender or borrower in Nevada outside the gaming industry.
Wow.
They really liked my business. They put me on the board for Nevada Bank.
Fantastic.
And so, and it was like, I was like just ping ponging off these amazing minds, and just learning and learning and learning. And just to I got my degree at Arizona State in the accounting and systems, and then about when I was 40 years old, I went back to school to Harvard for my OPM degree, because I felt like I hit the wall, and I needed like some extra know-how, and I always wanted to go to business school at Harvard. It was my dream.
Okay.
I was able to do that at age 40. That was in 98, 99. And I did the Cash America case study at Harvard that Dan presented.
Really?
I learned everything I needed to know about Cash America, which was like with 120, like in my class, I had 120 classmates from 40 different countries. We did the Cash America case study.
Wow.
And I could listen to all these guys, and I came out of there. I learned a lot. I was able to basically pivot the company in the 3 years and do some fabulous things. Additional things like learn about LTV, learn about customer life, that whole story, cost accounting, activity, process efficiencies, just more. I was like amping up profits, like tuning up the system to help me like further, like all these little gems I learned while I was at Harvard.
It's great.
And but also it prepared me because I took a class in preparing for the day when you sell your company.
No kidding. Did you ever envision you would do that, or like what happened?
No.
Okay.
No. So it's the love for the systems.
Okay.
I mean, when you're, so, as my self-appointed CEO, when you own the company, you can call yourself whatever you want. You take the title of CEO. And I learned at a fairly young age that there were things I was good at. There were things that I was great at, and there were things I was terrible at. And, it's just kind of classic, fill the gaps with really good people. And, but it was like hands off Steve's initiatives when it came to system development.
Yeah.
And, I had the team I was developing this for my company, and I spent, I spent a lot in the systems, but, obviously it helped increase my performance. My dream was back then was to sell and sell my systems to cash.
Yeah, I know.
And
And that was the one thing you didn't include.
it was
Like
like
when
they
you
didn't want it.
sold the company, you kept
They
the
didn't,
systems.
they didn't want it.
Yeah, that was,
They never wanted it. I mean, it was but they just wanted my stores.
yeah, short-sighted.
And so I was with Dan, and of course, the CFO. Who's the CFO?
Name's on the tip of my tongue. It's been 10 years.
Yeah.
Um,
we have to rethink that one. It'll come to
yeah.
me. But I was at a check cashing convention in Palm Springs, and I said, "Hey guys," and I showed my financial statements. Look what I did this month, and I see my growth rate, and I just initiated this, and I'm seeing this phenomenal performance. I'm looking where you guys are at. I went into your stores. I see how you're operating. I go, when can I you guys look at this? He goes, and I've been showing him my financials for 3 years.
Yeah.
They go, we love your stores. Would you ever think about selling it? And I go, I don't know. He goes, just give us the number. Just give us the number.
Wow.
And so I went back and I talked to my CFO, and he goes, this is what you've always wanted. You want to be in the systems business. This could be your opportunity. They don't want them. They don't want them. So just give me a number and we'll see where it goes.
Blessing.
Yeah,
absolute blessing.
It's one of those things, especially as a pawnbroker. You pawnbrokers always start high. So I said, okay, I'm going to give them a really high number. And the worst thing happened when you start with the first number, when they take it.
You're like, damn it.
But I would never, I never betrayed it. I was like a man of my word. The only thing, if you want to do this, or you're going to close on it, because it takes so much time. I said, yeah, I'm in. The number was done. It took, 5 months of getting through whatever the stuff you have to do to sell a company of that size.
Yeah.
And she actually had to sell their Swedish operations in order to buy mine. They didn't have the cash laying around. And apparently, in hindsight, talking to all those guys, and one of the best buys they've ever made. One of the worst decisions they ever made was they didn't acquire the system.
And take the system.
And it was the start for me to get into the software business.
Well, in hindsight for them, the system would have gone undervalued in the long term, not by the Cash America guys, but by the First Cash guys.
Yeah.
Because that, just different approach to technology and investment in technology, just completely like, apples and grapefruits. I mean, just completely different. And so I'm not sure that they would have known what to do with it and how to invest in it and keep it going on. They might have put it on a shelf and sold it back to you for pennies on the dollar. Who the heck knows?
Well, I would have loved just 3 years of my system being at cash.
Yeah, it would have been good.
It would have been a different turnout.
Yeah, it would have been good.
It would have been a different turnout. The turnout that we thought was going to happen when we both met each other and wanted to see, the future.
Yeah, well, I couldn't get them to buy into the online retail piece, which was I thought which is the game changer. Hey, I got a surfboard and I took it in Portland, Oregon, and it's the winter, and I can't sell it in Miami. I have no shipping. I've got surfboard's a bad example. It's giant, but things that may be seasonal or things that might appear in one place or the next. And the closest they came was bringing all the jewelry to that jewelry center, which I think was yours, right? Was that your place? Yours? Yeah.
I started that.
Yeah. Then they had the other.
They tried. It was hard. That was hard too.
Yeah. It was hard.
That was hard to scale. I would say, because I just finally met Rick Russell. I just had chit chat with him recently.
Oh, great.
And he was like, "Oh my God, what he's been able to do at First Cash. Oof.
Crazy, right?
Amazing. And wow, what a guy. Doug Orr, what a guy. The core team there.
Yeah.
So much respect for those guys. I really understand more now what their philosophy is, and obviously it's worked really well. But the part that I think in terms of the e-commerce thing, it's in-store pickup too.
Yeah. Of course.
You don't have to ship.
Yeah.
Put your stuff out for sale, and it would have been just, increase the velocity of customer acquisition. Customer acquisition is everything in business. The online guys, really focused on customer acquisition as a part of their key metric.
Mm-hmm.
But brick and mortar guys never really understood it the way that online guys do, because the online guys had to spend it on Google and any way they could figure out how to get traffic to their site in order to acquire the customer.
Yep.
But I mean, if you got it, especially the number of stores and the catalog that you have, to be able to do in-store pickup and show, because I always like saying, like, pawn shops don't have buyers, and the customer that ends up buying something in the store wasn't like done by some sort of great plan. It's a coincidence.
Yeah. It's a complete coincidence.
If someone came in and someone sold it and it's on the floor on Thursday, and some guy walks in there and says, "Just what I'm looking for."
Yeah.
And it's only one.
Yep.
It's not like only one. 20 SKUs.
Nope, not at all.
And
hey, I want to pivot for a second, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Because there's something important I want to get into this conversation that I know about that the audience doesn't. You're a baseball guy.
Mm. Yeah.
You're a baseball guy. When I met you, you were heavily involved in baseball.
Mm.
How did that come about? And why don't you tell everybody, for a minute here, what the other side, I mean, there's so many other things. We could probably do 3 of these episodes, but I didn't want to lose out on the baseball opportunity.
I love talking about it.
All right.
So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Wow. So, I'm like, never been, great at a sport, including baseball. I was catcher, shortstop. I played every sport in high school and never lettered. Okay.
Okay.
So great. Pretty good. No. Participated and played as hard as I could. Yes.
Okay.
But baseball was my favorite. I understood the game, and it's, it's so tactical. It's so strategic. It's such a game. There's so many things going on in baseball that go unnoticed. And I'm in Reno. I'm in Vegas, and I meet this guy who's a baseball fanatic named Chris Kempfer, and he was my land use guy who represented me because he loved me and I loved him. He's like one of my best friends today, and could say, talk about the pawn shop. Like, we had to get special use permits and go into neighborhoods and convince people that we were a good thing.
Yeah.
And we were, a good thing to the neighborhoods, and we proved it, and it became easier for him to sell. But he was the go-to guy for businesses, for most businesses in Las Vegas, but also he was the first attorney for then the Las Vegas Stars, which was a AAA team.
Okay.
And for every other sport that came in and out of Vegas before, we've got all the big boys now.
Oh, yeah.
He's also helping every one of those organizations as well. He's the guy. And Chris calls me up, and he said, the Stars owners and the ownership of the AAA teams would kind of go every 6 years, a new ownership team. And it was kind of it's sort of a business opportunity investment. You buy it and these guys would sell it. And Chris goes, "I know you love baseball. I want you to come down to the to our game on Friday. I want to talk to you about something. And so I walked in. So I meet him at the park, and it's in a place called Cashman. The park been around a long time. And he goes, I want to just take you down on the field. And so he takes me, and I'm walking on the field.
He knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
He knew exactly what he was. This guy's a smart guy.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
He goes, I can get 5% of this team. They want the local guys, some local representation. He goes, I think you'd be great at it. And I go, wow. I go, you want me to be on this with you? He goes, yeah. And I go, I'll do anything that you say I should do.
Okay.
And I did it.
Wow.
And immediately I'm great at operations. I can see things. I can help them. I helped the team right away on operations side, and help turn a business that was, breaking even into making some decent money.
Okay.
And so I gave some great advice at that level to the owners and to the management team. Fell in love with the president, Don Logan. And then I was just kind of a minority owner. And I said, we had lots of we had a lot of empty seats. We didn't have a great location in Las Vegas. It was an older stadium. It was suffering. And I said, let's start giving away tickets to all of the charities and all of the religious organizations. I go, let's get their kids here.
Yeah.
Just if they have to bring their kids to get a free ticket, let's give each one of these like 200 tickets, and let's do a Wednesday night for this one. Let's give them a little notoriety. Oh my God. Talk about
huge. Yeah, they're empty. Who cares?
And I'm like feeling great. Like I'm doing something for the community, and I'm giving away seats, and I'm feeling great about it, and the team's benefiting from it.
Yeah.
And so, and then to progress, I also own a hockey team, because the owners of the team, like, were so like happy about what was going on in Vegas. They bought a hockey franchise, and we had our first hockey team. I did get into I was actually asked to get involved with our current team, the Golden Knights, but I didn't do it. But I was involved.
You'd have had a big giant ring on your hand for this
Yeah,
podcast.
right. I know, right? Dang it. And so we never won a championship also in a AAA team, so I never got one of those rings. But so the owners of the team were from California. They ended up selling, and because they lost so much money on the hockey deal, they just made a bad deal.
Yeah. And
but I got to learn about hockey in a much different ownership role, because I probably had 1/10%, whatever it came out to, because they took our team and they made us participate. So I had full dilution. They ended up selling the whole thing, and I think I broke even in 5 years. I was so disappointed, because I loved it, a part of it. I said that was just a journey that I'd never see again. And then, progressed 10 years later, I get a call from Don Logan, the president. He's still the president of the team.
Okay.
He said, we're trying to move the baseball park. The current owner is getting out of the game. We want you. This was after I sold the company, knew I had a few bucks to be able to afford it.
Yeah.
We want you to buy the team along with the Howard Hughes Company and help get us a new ballpark. That's why we want you. I said, okay, let me see what I can do. I pulled together a couple buddies. I ended up owning 50% of our AAA team. With the Howard Hughes Company, I hit it off with David Weinrib, who was the CEO, and it was a love something relationship.
Okay.
He was the CEO of Howard Hughes, an amazing leader, and I really I respect the guy for how he ran that company. We really got along well on a personal level. We end up splitting and end up selling out my portion. But what I was capable of doing is that I immediately saw how to get our team into a new stadium.
Okay.
And we went from the worst baseball stadium to number one when we built the
Wow.
stadium in Las Vegas. This was before hockey. We've got approval before the hockey stadium was opened before, because MGM was actually building T-Mobile, and then the hockey team came around, and Foley, who's like amazing, had the foresight and was able to get a hockey franchise in Vegas.
Amazing.
But I remember when I bought the team and I was getting interviewed, and this was like, I was on a radio show and they were asking me, like, why did you do it? Like, why do you think that, why would you invest in a sports team? Because they all failed. The baseball team had been in Las Vegas for 32 years, but it was in a very tough location, and it made money, lost money. It was very marginal. And I said, there's a soul. There's this, obviously Las Vegas is the gaming capital of the world. You don't think that there's sports fans here?
Yeah.
I go, you put us in a new stadium. I go, you'll see sports fans come. And then I was able to move the baseball stadium. I figured out the financing. I worked with the Clark County Commission, the city of Las Vegas. It was like the most complicated financing. I got it publicly financed. We got a new stadium built. And I mean, and baseball asked me to come in,
So
which
great.
was like, they liked my interaction the first time I was in. They believed in me and my ability, and they gave me like 4 years of like so much fun to be able to participate in a sport that I love. And I love baseball from the sports side, but I love the organizations and the people that are in it.
That's so
And
cool.
now we have John Fisher, who's the owner of the A's, who I had the pleasure of meeting. Fabulous guy, a fabulous addition to Las Vegas, a family guy. And the Oakland A's are going to just be powerhouse when
Amazing.
when they get into the stadium that they want to build. I don't know if you see pictures of it.
I haven't.
It is spectacular. Like
Really.
baseball stadium of like no one's ever seen before.
It
So-
doesn't surprise me, because the stuff that's going on there between the football stadium, which is just completely ridiculous, the Sphere, which is a complete freak of nature and a piece of art at the same time. I imagine that this baseball stadium is going to top everything. I mean,
It's right
the
there.
football
Right.
stadium, right? Yeah.
No, the new baseball stadium.
Yeah, new baseball
Yes,
stadium.
yeah. It's going to be, it's definitely like ranks amongst those fantastic places. I
Wow.
don't know. Did you get a chance to see U2 there?
I didn't. No,
Yeah.
I was in Vegas for a conference, busier than get out, back in March.
Wow.
And my wife came with me on the trip, and with a bunch of friends got to go and do a little Sphere tour
Oh, okay.
and saw what's going on. But we have not yet seen a show there.
It's
We will at some
transformative. I don't
point.
know if you like the Dead, but the Dead's going to be there.
That's what I
Fish is gonna
heard.
be there if any of these bands are. I went to see the Stones this last weekend.
It's great.
They weren't at the Sphere. I wish they were. But it's a transformative experience. It turns music into the visual, like music is just like, it just makes your body feel a certain way. And if you can take the power of music and the sounds and the notes and the rhythms and everything that makes you like feel the way that music makes you feel,
Yeah,
and then you bring in a visual
crazy,
that's almost like as equally as powerful.
unreal.
Wow. It's
How many
really,
seats in the Sphere?
I think it's 18,000.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's a good
It
size.
was originally built to house our basketball team someday.
Really?
Yeah, and then Sheldon Adelson, who passed a few years ago, who had the vision to bring the Raiders to Las Vegas. I want to mind that he was the
Yeah.
one, and then stepped away from an ownership position there, and then initiated the project, the Sphere, that later got sold to Madison Square Gardens, that turned it into more of an entertainment venue.
Okay.
I think was first thought of as the potential of being a basketball arena,
Wow.
which would have been, it may still, who knows, but
Do you know anything about the design of it? Like who designed it and where that
I
all
don't.
came from?
I just know that it was like the budget was an unheard $1 billion, and it cost $2 billion to finish it.
Yeah. Crazy.
Over
Always
two-
happens.
Yeah.
$2 billion.
Billion
Man, you
bucks.
better have a lot going on
And
there for that.
the exoskeleton of it, I mean, you go by, it's like a moving, like it's a moving object that's like feels like it's alive.
I was there the first night it lit up.
Oh,
It was a
you
giant
saw it.
eyeball. It
Oh
was a
my
giant
God.
eyeball.
It's
First time it
incredible.
lit up. We were
That wasn't
there.
until I missed that.
Yeah, we were next door at the Wynn.
Yeah.
And we were there with some friends just for a good 4 days, and we were looking at it, admiring it all the time we were there. And somebody said, "Oh, they're going to light it up for the first time tonight." I said, "Oh, that's pretty crazy."
Thanks for asking about baseball. Those are really good feelings. And
Well, I'll tell you what, I can see a difference in your posture, and I know how much you loved the pawn business. I mean,
Yeah.
you've been in it since you're 14, 13 years old. I didn't know you were third generation. But I do want to ask you one more thing, because I want to get to this topic. Early on, I grabbed this little bottle of water, and you said to me, "Hey, Vic, get away from the plastic." And you sounded like you had some facts to drop on the water and the plastics and all that. So tell me about, what you're doing, drinking the water and whatnot.
Well, so I mean, outside of being a cigar smoker and quitting smoking cigars when I was 50, which I absolutely loved.
Okay.
My kids would always, were on it. And, tobacco's bad for you and you shouldn't smoke it for any reason. And I eventually end up quitting. And then I give that all the credit to my kids, making, creating the awareness around me and say, you got to quit.
Yeah.
So I'm really grateful for them, helping me with that. And then my kids, my second daughter, Tahoe, she's always been on me about plastic. And when she was in high school, going to school at Gorman here in Las Vegas, she introduced the bottle stations.
Really?
And so, yeah, she brought bottle stations to the school.
So cool.
And then, convinced everyone to spend $10 for a nice water bottle. Now they spend 30 or 40 for a Stanley.
Yeah.
But maybe more for a different one. But and yeah, so she really believed in it. And she's always been, I mean, she's a incredible artist and accomplished. And she's very passionate about the reuse. Imagine that, the reuse of materials.
Yeah.
Kind of fits right into my wheelhouse as pawnbroker, part of the conservation. And she said, the plastic's bad for you. And I started paying attention to it. And Fiji, which is my go-to water.
Yeah.
And I like to drink Fiji because it comes from a place where there's not a lot of industrial pollution and activity. Their bottles were found to have had high plastic particulates. And you think about it, it's just tiny little microscopic stuff, right?
Yeah.
You see pictures of plastic in the ocean accumulating because it doesn't disintegrate. It doesn't break down.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking like, okay, just put 1 and 1. Like 1 and 1 is 2, right?
How long does it take to plastic to, like, if you've got a bottle that's relatively new,
Yeah.
and, maybe this bottle of water was put in the bottle, I don't know how long it sits around in warehouses and whatnot, but I'm kind of thinking it's months and not years.
Oh,
right?
It can be fresh, like right off the press. It doesn't have to have, it can have plastic particulates on the inside of the bottle.
As it's manufactured.
Yes.
So it becomes part of the water.
Yeah, so it breaks down with environmental conditions to the plastic.
Okay.
Which increases the potential. I don't know how it breaks down and the quality of the plastic, and how it's made, and who knows? Like, who knows what we know and what we can see. But imagine, when you see these big, huge, like you see all these sea animals with stuff wrapped around them, and then you see how in certain parts of the world where plastic bags and things,
Yeah.
and like we're drinking this in our system, and
Can't be
it's
good.
accumulating.
Can't be good.
It can't be good. So,
people have moved. I mean, everything used to come in glass. Everything. Milk came in glass. Soft drinks came in glass. Snapples came in glass. I mean, everything came in glass. And what didn't come in glass came in a and an aluminum can. And then all of a sudden, we went to these plastic containers. I have to think largely because of cost. But I remember there was a push on, glass, and the recycling and the safety and all of that. And, it's funny how these things have evolved. If you remember the first liter bottles, they were made so flimsily that it had the plastic sleeve that sat on the bottom.
Yeah.
That went up like, 20%. And then they designed it were strong. Well, these things right now, a little crinkle crackle here. I mean, sometimes they're so thin, Steve, they don't even stand up. You put a bottle down and it'll fall over. It's so thin. It can't even support itself.
So, it's just really innovative manufacturing and, and then whatever the chemical composition in order to build the strength, lower cost, right? And then also, I mean, weight is so important because of transportation, right?
That's right.
Well, and then unfortunately, glass and the glass bottle and the milk and the delivery, just handling back and forth, so expensive.
Yep.
And then how much are we spending in transportation costs?
Yeah.
And what my daughter talked me into, and she said, you need to make an investment in a water for purification system.
Okay.
And then I have both my homes decided to just do it. Just listen to her. Just listen to your daughter.
Okay.
Because she knows what she's talking about. And I made the switch, and I'm learning about how the water can distribute and purify the water in a lot of different ways for good health. And I'm actually going to do a little bit more research about the water that, because it's water source too. Like what's in our water here? How does it purify it? And then what's the best water for me? Because we're just not supposed to. I mean, we're not just, we're made generically somehow.
Yeah.
But we treat ourselves generically. But you've learned that your diet, right, has changed immensely because you're just not a generic product.
Right.
Your body needs a certain type of intake, and we're you and I like talking about this and like learning how to do this right because we like our lives. We know that if we put good things in our body, we know that we'll feel better. And you and I like waking up in the morning, having a great productive day, and then get the fullest out of it. And we don't ever want it to quit. And so
is your system a whole house system?
No, just only drinking water.
And then just drinking water.
Just drinking water. Then I have a softener for the house that basically treats the water for that.
Where is this thing installed?
It's not in my kitchen, right under my kitchen sink.
Under the kitchen sink.
Yeah, how many are drinking?
How many are there? A series of filters in there, or how's this work?
So it's a metal box. Do you want to see it? Should I just haul this thing over and show you?
No, it's okay. You'll send me a link to it because I'm probably going to have it under my sink in short order.
I'll send it to you. And it's a metal. It's really quite compact. It's not complicated. It's just the way that they've engineered this piece of equipment.
Okay.
In treating it a certain way and delivering the water in a very consistent way. And it has it does have a filter on it. Okay. You have to change periodically. And then they come in.
You can dial it up, right? You would tell me you can dial it
because the water. I live in a high rise.
Yeah.
And it's the pipes that get the water here. It's the pipes they put into place. It's all has to be fine tuned. So that's what I like too. They're not really handling it generically and just saying, oh, you just plug it in and then fix your water. So I think they thought about it right. And I think she pointed me in the right direction. My sister's been using a very similar system. She says it's changed her complexion.
Wow.
That it's great for the skin and your intake. It's just another good thing to put in your water in your body. You're supposed to drink a lot of water. So
all right, you got me sold.
Okay.
Well, I do have a filtration system at my sink, and because we make coffee from the tap water, and it's got a very long cartridge on. It's probably 2 feet, 18 inches to 2 feet, and you're supposed to change it once a year. And I've got a 10-month reminder. I get it before it's done. And
that's what I've used for years too. That helps.
Okay.
That helps.
Yeah, and I could see the difference. I can see the difference because I can go to the sink on the island that's not filtered and fill up a glass of water. Then I could take the exact type of glass, go to the sink that has the filter on it, fill it up and put it down. and you almost don't even see the water in the glass that's filtered. And the other one just kind of, you don't really want to drink that one,
No,
you know?
no, I mean, it just has stuff in it. You can see it.
Yeah, you can see it.
And so here you're getting rid of the stuff you can't see.
No doubt. So you'll have to, when we're done here, you'll have to send me a link.
We will.
I want to transition to our last topic because we didn't cover it enough. And this is really a piece where I know you're going to light up again.
Okay.
Bravo Systems. So you sell Cash America stores. They're interested in stores, not the systems. And then you jump full time into, this is before Tally is around. You jump full time and say, "Hey, I'm a software company now." You spin that off. You stand this up, and I've watched from the wings over the last 10 plus years. I mean, you were formidable then. You guys are really formidable now. I mean, the things you do that you weren't doing back then, the technological advancements. Is it Jane? Judy. Sorry, it's Judy. I knew it was with a J.
Yeah.
Right. So you've got some AI built into the platform, but and then you've done some acquisitions. Like, tell people about Bravo Systems. Like, what are you doing? How are you innovating? What's happening there?
So when I sold the Cash America, I started a company and I used our legacy system Prima. I figured, this thing was so effective to my company. I figured that I'd have people waiting in line to get it. It was distributed service model. It was expensive. It meant people that had multiple stores, like 20, 30 stores, who were looking for efficiency and they were easier to sell. We sold about 6 systems to 6 companies. There's still a company that actually uses the legacy system today. Simple Financial, who operate throughout the Caribbean, Puerto Rico, and into Latin America, that use that platform. And but it didn't fly because the system was just too heavy and expensive to deploy. And I decided, and this is in 2006, that I basically shut down the company. So in 2008, everything's melting down. And I still sitting on my cash, most of my cash. Fortunately, I didn't put everything I had into the market when everything was melting down.
Yeah.
And I go, what am I going to leave my kids? Like, am I going to leave them money? And I thought how fortunate it was that I went into business with my dad. And I thought, no, I'm not going to do this. And I was bored. And I go, I got to start up something. I got to leave them something and do something. That was, that giving them an opportunity to have a business is something I thought was just something more than just leaving them some dough.
Sure. Right.
And I needed to, and then there was this new technology was coming out in the cloud, this thing called the cloud. And then my two partners today, who are like the backbone of being able to do this, Mike Wishart and Kelly York, they had both been laid off. And I was like helping all my ex-employees who would call me in desperation because of what was happening during that financial crisis. And I was like, job placement.
Yeah.
And I'd find people, good people, everyone is still looking for them at the time. And I was helping just maybe over 20 people find jobs. And these were all great people, all A players. You just want them. And everyone that I turned them on to thanks me still today if they're still working together. And then Mike was my guy when I built the enterprise level system on Prima that operated super pawn stores. He was like brilliant. And then Kelly York was project manager and technology manager. He was like hardworking, basically a great project manager, tech project manager. These two guys, Mike promised me he was a key because never would have been able to build this thing if he didn't stick around. Enterprise development, right? It's insane to start it. If you're going to do it, it's like, who wants to do it? Because I don't know what the percentage of success in actually finishing an enterprise development, but it's not good. And I did it. It's slow, and I did it with Prima, but then actually building enterprise class deployment on a SaaS platform is exponentially more difficult.
Yep.
And so Mike said, "I think we can do it. The technology's available." He goes, "I want to do it." He goes, "I know your vision, and I want to build it." And I
Nice.
said, "I'm in. You're hired tomorrow. You just have to promise me to stick it out." And I'm thinking we're going to get this thing done in 5 years.
Okay.
Okay, that was the goal.
I tell you, 5 years, I mean, you had a lot more patience out of the box because most people think they're going to get it done in 9 months. So that's the problem with development.
Well, yeah, and that's sort of the maturity level we had, that if we're going to build a multinational, because it was multinational systems, you remember, we could build
Yep.
this thing, put it in 50 different countries. We want to build a multinational scalable system. And to build an enterprise class system, if you don't put the time into the architecture and all the stuff that you never see, the
Yeah.
basement of this thing, it's supposed to hold this masterpiece of high-rise development.
Yep.
So I sent these guys back to school for the first 60 days.
Wow.
I rented a condo in Vegas with the shag carpeting. I stood up a rack server, air conditioned the whole place out, and the three of us on paper. I started designing screens on paper.
Wow.
We started Bravo.
And so that condo was the office?
Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah.
It's so
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. And then my first hire was this gal, young woman, brilliant. She was out of a job and a tutor, and she was helping my kids in their math class. And she was eating dinner with us one night, and I go, like, "Who are you? Like, how are you helping us? And what are you doing?" She goes, "I just graduated college and I couldn't find a job." And I go, "Where'd you go to school?" She goes, "MIT."
Oh no.
I go, "Okay,
Holy cow.
hire number 4." And she was like, she started the whole thing. She handled billing, she handled customer support, she handled sales. I mean, she did everything. And then she basically launched us. We launched in 2011 or 2010. We went live in 2009, but we really had a product in 2010. And she hung around for about 4 years. I mean, we just had crazy, startup stuff with stuff going on that you just can't imagine, but it's startup stuff. And then she moved on. She just came back.
Oh, she came back. That's
She came back
fantastic.
2 years ago.
That's great.
So she's back amongst the team. We have 100 employees now, over 100 employees.
Wow.
We had 20 employees when you and I met.
Wow.
And
Fantastic.
and then so so the part of this was, and the part that I really want to like you really need to find purpose in wanting to do something. It was because I was bored. It's because I wanted to do something for my kids. That was a small part of it, but I really believe that small businesses are under so much pressure. If in brick and mortar, if they don't get help in one way or the other, they're out of business.
Yep.
I felt that the pawn business was kind of specialized because the nature of the transaction is you have to hold the merchandise. And so in the gun business, you have to do the transaction in a brick and mortar store in order to take transactions. So
Right.
you go, okay, it's going to be around, but if we can really help them out. And the recycling part. And so I'm thinking preserving the idea, the resale of merchandise, helping small business. Like, this is like ringing all the things that I really want to get, feel good about.
Yeah.
And then just create like super efficient, everything from the beginning has 3 or 4 different purposes in it. And if you can leverage that kind of stuff, you can create great process and great technology. And so,
you're ringing a lot of bells, and you were way early in a lot of this stuff. Now, how many sites have popped up for reselling where people can sell their own merchandise. It was rather, I mean, eBay was it, right? It was just eBay. And now there's one specific for, teen clothes and this and that, and Mercari. And gosh, there are so many different places where people are posting. Got out of Craigslist. Facebook has marketplaces. I mean, the lifespan of merchandise now, it's mainstream. And you were doing that, and the pawn industry was doing that well beyond. I mean, I think the only thing maybe that came before you was a garage sale.
Yeah. So the realization while we had these pawn shops, when none of this was going on, the internet, this is back in the 80s, we couldn't get enough merchandise in my stores because I picked non-pawn shop locations, which were retail, and I couldn't keep enough merchandise in my stores.
Really?
Because everyone that knew how to shop in pawn shops knew there were great deals.
Yeah, exactly.
And so the realization, because everyone bought new, they thought if they bought used, they were buying something that was no good.
Yeah.
And the people then, so, the evolution, and when eBay came out, and then I was back in Harvard in 99, 98. So the internet was like just starting to pop.
Just starting to pop.
And when I saw the internet, I go, holy smokes, some big, we got to be here. So I went to Boston, like in the very early first year, and I started hearing all these guys talk about it. I come back to Reno, and I come back to see when was it? Oh, this was back in Reno. This was before Bravo, and developing Prima. I go, I've got to go to eBay. We got to figure out how to integrate. So I just call eBay.
Okay.
And I go, this is when Meg Whitman was running it. Okay. I get to the VP and I go, hey, I've got this number of pawn shops. I have all this inventory. I got to figure out how to integrate this because we're doing this. We start doing it manually. I go, this is just costing and taking too much time. I got to integrate it. They go, well, we're just launching an API. Maybe you can help us. So wow. we were the first to do it with eBay. And to the extent where they actually wanted to sign a partnership with me to help them integrate eBay into retail stores.
Wow.
And we were this close to signing a contract with eBay. And then they basically, I don't know if you remember the eBay stores in the very, very early, they actually were experimenting.
I do remember that.
And they decided that, we're not going to be tied with brick and mortar, and they kind of let that go. But they have the super pawn model still integrated with their API that we developed together.
Wow, that's fantastic. I don't recall that. That's amazing.
Yeah, I really talked about that. But the very first case study eBay wrote was on super pawn.
Amazing. Yeah. Amazing.
So I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good at being too early.
Well, I'll tell you what,
it's not always the place where you want to be, because 15 years later,
yeah, exactly.
I'm still talking about the e-commerce,
But they say you're early until you're late.
Right.
You're early until you're late, and so you got to be in it for quite some time.
We had the mobile app. I mean, we did the mobile app first to do that.
Yeah.
And I mean, all I can say is that, and then the piece about AI, how we brought in AI. I don't know if you remember, but a big part of our operating system was what pricing model for product.
Yeah.
Now we're doing predictive modeling, basically using cluster database analysis to basically predict the value of things in 6 months out.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. So we're there, and we're like, man, we're just really close to having some really cool stuff.
That's very sophisticated. For the pawn shop business. It's light years beyond that.
Yeah.
Well, I was going back to the Second Life of stuff. Brands are even launching now with their own platforms. You familiar with the clothing company Faherty?
Yeah. Yes.
Yes. So those guys, they're not brand new, but they got gas now. Okay.
Yeah.
They got a lot of gas. If you follow their social media, seems like they're opening a new store every month. I mean, it's just pop. It's a really good store. I'm a fan of the clothing. I've got a lot of their clothing. Maybe a year ago, the Faherty Exchange got launched. And so, you wear the clothes. They're going to last a good long time. The quality's real good. You're tired of the shirt. Why are they going to have that transaction going to go on eBay or Mercari, or even, there's a shop here in Dallas. My wife brings her gently used items to, and it's you bring them, they only take high-end designer stuff. They put a price on it, you get 50%. That's the whole model. Pardon me. Everything in the store, every bit of merchandise is in there at zero cost. Zero. The cost is the building, the people, the infrastructure. There is it's actually a real smart model, but they're very choosy about what they take. They only take high-end stuff. You won't see Levi's in there. You're not going to see, whatever brands. You're not going to, only high-end stuff, and 50%. They know what they're going to get for it. And then there's no accounting, Steve. This is the thing. I laugh with my wife. She'll come and say, "Oh, look, I got a check came in the mail today." And I'm like, "Yeah, you got a check at like 20 cents on the dollar from what we spent on it." But I'm like, "Well, there's like a little Excel sheet. Sold these items. Well, what did you drop off? Oh, I don't remember. Don't you have a running schedule of like everything you dropped off there, and they check things off? Well, they're not that sophisticated.
Right.
I would donate them otherwise." Okay, well, we got something. And lo and behold, $600 shows up, $300 shows up, $400 shows up. You see how these 3 items sold. That's the end of it. But that's where it's going. Steve, I could talk for a long time. We have gone the distance, as they say. We took it to the 10th round. I super enjoyed it. Your stories and the background is amazing. I know the audience is going to really like it. If I had to summarize this, I mean, here's a guy who grew up in a family business that he grew to love maybe more than the family did. You built multiple generations of life on it. You built another software business out of it that supports that industry. You're a massive presence in town. You've done a lot of great things for people in sports and baseball. We didn't even get into the other philanthropy, but I super appreciate you coming on the show and sharing with the audience everything you've been through. I'm going to ask you one last question before we wrap up. What advice would you give your 18-year-old self? And would that advice, if somebody coming up now as an entrepreneur were to start their business, maybe it's coming at, I'm going to rephrase it. Let's take this back. What advice would you give a young entrepreneur, regardless of the business now, that maybe you wished you had known when you got started?
What advice would I give? I'll answer it this way. When you're a young entrepreneur and you have it, okay, you have this desire, what you don't know is a blessing.
Okay.
Because, and I would say, if you have this idea and you're passionate about it, you just got to do it. And you just can't give up. It's the tenacious part of being an entrepreneur is it's going to be something you can't even imagine. And the hardest thing to be is an entrepreneur more than once. Because sometimes you just blow through things that you'd never do the second time.
100%.
And you get through it. Some of this is magic. And if you know there's a wall and you see it, the second time you'll go around it, but the first time you're just going straight. And
you're trying to go through it.
Sometimes you just get through it. So I think being naive is the best characteristics of a young entrepreneur, and do not give that up. Don't be ashamed of it. Just do it.
I absolutely love it. It reminds me of a scene from a movie, number 1, and 2, a quote from another entrepreneur. The scene from the movie. The movie came out in the 80s called The Idolmaker. Started Ray Sharkey. It was one of my favorite movies, sort of underground B movie. And he's a guy who wants to build musical artists. He's very talented. He's a great songwriter. He knows the moves. He's a producer. Just doesn't have the look. So he finds guys with the look, and his father, who he really despises, bankrolls him. And there's a scene where he goes to this restaurant, he's got a shark skin suit, and he throws money on the table. He's like, "What's this?" He says, "It's your investment, paid off. See that? I'm a great success now." And the father says to him, "Vincent, you do something once, you're lucky. You do something twice, you're a success." And he walks out of there all pissed off. But he listens and he goes and finds another artist, and he makes this guy bigger than the first artist. So that's great. And Warren Buffett said that that tenacity in people is what he buys. He buys the tenacity in people because everybody's got a great idea. It's the people that go execute, that will charge the wall, that will go around it the second time and don't have to smash their head into it, that will never give up, that will find a way, that will find a solution. That's the difference. Not a lot of people have the patience for that. Not a lot of people have the gut for it. Not a lot of it takes a lot of gut. You got to constantly believe when others don't. So not only often, sometimes you find yourself continuing to sell yourself. Wow, should I really do this? It's really a good idea. Then you got to sell the team, everybody else around you.
Hey, dude, what did we talk about before we started this about everyone telling you never not to work for Cash America? Sometimes
No kidding.
Sometimes you got to, if you think it's right.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's the sign of an opportunity.
100%.
Right?
By the way,
you will be told a lot. You'll be told no a lot. You're doing it wrong.
All the time.
Right. All the time. Yeah. And I just
Steve,
just one last piece. I just have
please.
So I got to mention my daughter Tally, who's now the CEO of Bravo.
Yes, we got her coming on the show.
She's coming on the show. You mentioned, I just found out, which is so cool. My younger daughter Tahoe just started. For anyone that's an entrepreneur, for anyone that wants to start a business, if you are blessed to work with your kids, there's absolutely nothing better.
I'm working on it myself, Steve. I've been working on it myself.
It's so much fun. It's so much in the world. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much, man. I really, really appreciate it. This will be a great episode. And hopefully we'll have you back in 6 months. We'll talk about some other things.
Okay. Thanks,
Steve. Bye. Hey, folks. Thanks for tuning into the show. You can find us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, the Podcast Index, and Podcasting 2.0. We'd really appreciate if you download Fountain, find us there, and support us via value for value. We hope you enjoy the show. Happy listening.